Mark Hemingway is here. He's a senior writer at Real Clear Investigations, and he joins us now. Hello, Mark.
Hey, glad to be back.
Okay, so what's going on with Elon Musk's platform X, formerly Twitter, and Kamala Harris's campaign?
Okay, so there's a very popular Twitter account called Reddit Lies, and this guy is like a serious internet researcher. And he discovered that the Harris-Walz campaign was running this sort of secret Discord server. Discord's like a popular app where you can sort of create communities that work together.
Yeah.
And what they were doing is they were corralling all of these campaign volunteers, and they're using these volunteers to swarm online platforms and manipulate them. So in the case of Twitter or X, what they're doing is X is this community notes feature where if someone tweets out information that's false or wrong, people can try and correct that, put a community note on that post, and people will vote up and down on whether it's true. And if it gets enough votes, that note will be appended to the post correcting the post. And what the Kamala Harris campaign was doing was they were tweeting out things that were like outrageously wrong. I mean, even CNN's fact checker, which famously hates Trump, wrote an entire column attacking the campaign for all of the falsehoods they've been putting out on their Twitter accounts. But somehow, even though these falsehoods were even being called out by CNN, there was never any community notes correcting them appended to it. And the reason why we now know is that in this Discord server, employees of like the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, were directing these hordes of Kamala Harris volunteers to go online and vote down all these community notes that were accurately pointing out that the campaign was lying. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. They were doing all sorts of other online manipulation.
Yeah, so this account, Reddit Lies, I just read a piece from Reddit Lies in the Federalist this week. It's an anonymous account, but this guy has been able to infiltrate this Discord server where the Kamala Harris campaign is actively engaged in what we know online is the online term is brigading, where you create this artificial effort to make it look like there's an authentic response to things on the internet. And the Kamala Harris campaign has an army of people who are dedicated to manipulating reality.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's really amazing because he came back. He has like all the receipts. If you go and look at his reporting on this, you've got all these just amazing screenshots that are just laying it all out. I mean, there's no hiding behind what they're doing. I mean, they're deliberately putting out disinformation and propaganda on all of these sites, and it is incredibly deceptive. And it's not just a matter of just being deceptive. I mean, I guess technically it's not illegal to lie to the public, but they certainly are violating the terms of service of all of these websites. And obviously, if there were a Republican campaign or the Trump campaign that were directly telling their volunteers to go out there and put misinformation all over the internet or things that weren't true,
yes,
you better believe that people would be all over this story, and it would be leading cable news for days.
Yeah, that's for sure. So I saw Elon Musk apparently responded with some interest in this today, and your wife, Molly Hemingway, tweeted at him, grateful that he's taking a look at this. Do you think that Elon might get in the way of their effort to rig the system?
Well, I think just the fact that the whole Discord server has been exposed is going to, have a huge impact on what they're doing. But yeah, certainly I'm sure that Elon is, he says he's looking into it, and I'm sure, he's very proud of the community notes feature. And certainly the community notes feature where people vote on whether stuff is true rather than having just the admins at X, randomly kick people off the internet that they decide is, false, which is what was going on in the last election to, their everlasting shame, is a better system. But, obviously it's being gamed, and I hope that Elon can have his engineers and everything, a lot of talented people over there, take a look at how they can keep this feature from being overwhelmed this way.
And I was just talking to a friend in conservative media today about this, but I love the community notes feature because it democratized fact-checking. So the fact-checking apparatus, such that it is in the United States, is mostly controlled by an elite cabal of legacy media outlets who are deciding what is allowed to get around social media and what's not. And by allowing just individual American citizens, anybody who's on X, to contribute, and then people can vote, they can look at it, they can authenticate it, they can kick the tires. It's a good system, Mark. And you have Kamala Harris and her campaign, her official campaign, going out of the way to subvert it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's exactly what's going on. And I would also like to add that, this is this is part two of a 3-part report. That,
Yeah.
there's another report dropping tomorrow, and the report that dropped the first day, showed how they were, having incredible success manipulating the social media platform Reddit. And so they're doing this across the board. I mean, this is, a really widespread effort that a lot of thought and coordination has gone into. And it's really, really appalling.
I talked about this yesterday, too, that it struck me as jarring that 1 out of every 8 posts that are popular on the politics subreddit, which is a very active community, 1 out of every 8 of their popular posts were actually written by and juiced by the Kamala Harris campaign. So this is supposed to be a place where you have authentic conversations about politics. And sure, there's lots of left-wing people there. They're allowed to be left-wing. But the Kamala Harris campaign is doing this, and they're not disclosing this. In political advertising, you've got to say that you're with the Kamala campaign at the end. On Reddit, they're being very deceptive, Mark.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And what's really amazing is that the moderators of Reddit are so left-wing that they've been repeatedly banning anyone who tries to attempt to post the link to the Federalist story, pointing out that Reddit is being manipulated. The moderators of our politics won't let people point out that their own forum is being manipulated. I mean, it's really out of control. I think that people. One of the encouraging things though is I think the story of this election. If you look at the importance of the Rogan interview and all these other things that traditional media are becoming less and less relevant, and these alternative forms of media are becoming more and more relevant. And I think that alternative media, like X, for instance, has better safeguards against this kind of stuff. But you still have, and the legacy media obviously has proven that they're willing to pump out false information on COVID, everything. But I think with this is encouraging that we're heading in this direction.
I think you're right. I think it's headed in the right direction. But thank God Elon owns X. That's a huge piece of this because this week we saw, you mentioned the Joe Rogan interview. Google suddenly, in a big mistake, they're telling everybody it's a mistake. It was an algorithm mistake. On YouTube, it was impossible to simply search for Joe Rogan, Donald Trump, and find his interview this week. There was a period of like 24 hours where that interview you couldn't find it through a conventional search. You had to really go out of your way to Joe Rogan's channel, to click to his videos, to find the actual interview. And Google has said, oh, that was just a mistake. And we've seen a lot of these mistakes, Mark Hemingway, and it turns out they usually happen just ahead of elections, and they all go in the same direction. What am I to make of that?
Yeah, well, obviously, I mean, big tech is a huge issue. I mean, Facebook and Google have been putting their thumb on the scale forever. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you can cite chapter and verse. I mean, I think it was the University of North Carolina that did this amazing study that showed that that the percentage of Democratic fundraising emails that got through Gmail spam filters was unbelievably higher than Republican fundraising emails. And I'm sure that just doesn't happen by accident. And you could even quantify the staggering amount of money the Republicans were losing in terms of fundraising because of this. That's not an accident. I have a feeling that some engineer somewhere is doing that. But it's also true that so much of what happens in these networks rely on these social metrics in terms of people clicking like buttons and stuff like that. And
yes.
That, provides all kinds of opportunities here for malign actors, foreign intelligence, you name it, to come in and do these, artificial astroturfing campaigns.
Yes.
And, make things appear artificially more popular than they are.
And these are big organizations, these tech companies, populated by a lot of left-wing activists, obviously. Imagine the temptation that some of them must feel, If there's a formula used to decide which fundraising emails make it through to an inbox and which ones don't, and you lean ever so slightly on the algorithm to change just how often those emails are being delivered, you can really distort an entire election very easily.
Yep, that's exactly right. In fact, in one of our pieces on how Reddit is being manipulated, there's a quote from one of the top execs at Reddit that talks about how, he really feels that a platform like Reddit could, in fact, be used to manipulate an election. I mean, they're openly talking about this possibility. And, when you look at some of the, political stances of the people that are running these kinds of networks, you do wonder. And that's not a healthy place to be.
Yeah. What do you make of, so right now, one of the things I've heard President Trump mention on the campaign trail is he's received phone calls from some of the executives of these big tech companies including Sundar Pichai at Google. Like, clearly they're trying to curry some favor with him. Jeff Bezos, very infamously this week, says, "Oh, we're not endorsing anybody. We're getting out of the endorsement business," because, obviously he's trying to protect all sorts of government contracts that he has with the federal government. What do you make of their behavior, both in forms of censorship here, but in public, the CEOs saying they can work with anybody, including Trump?
Well, I think there's two ways to look at it. I mean, the first way is the one that you rightly pointed out. I mean, a lot of these big companies have massive government contracts, and they're worried about retaliation, and they see a vibe shift, as it were, in terms of even if Trump loses, they're going to have to deal with a lot more sort of overt and organized resistance to what they're trying to do because, people have, now recognize that, they're clearly putting their thumb on the scale. The second way of looking at it is they've been putting their thumb on the scale for so long that they realize that they're taking such a credibility hit that it's going to be bad for their business long term, and they just can't keep doing that. I think Bezos gets a little bit of an unfair rap, and to some extent, I'm sure his business interests were in his mind when he made that decision. But if you look at the trajectory of the Washington Post, which has lost half its audience, and lost $77 million last year, he fundamentally recognizes that credibility might be the foremost issue for the paper, and letting the paper continue to operate as a hysterical partisan outlet is, just unsustainable, and it can't happen.
Right. If you're in the truth-telling business, it turns out integrity is important. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, something like that.
Well, then that would be an improvement. That'd be a vast improvement over, like pushing for Democrats to have power permanently at all costs, regardless of what kind of lies you have to tell. So hopefully it's a sea change. Although apparently they're going through a massive civil war at the Washington Post right now, and it couldn't happen to a better place, honestly. Mark Hemingway, thank you very much from Real Clear Investigations for all your excellent work and your time today. Thank you, sir.